Okay. All right, everybody, good evening. Welcome back to Exploring the Lord of the Rings. This is Corey Olson, the Tolkien professor, for session 90 of Exploring the Lord of the Rings. This has been a lot of fun. We just had Mythmoot this past weekend. Had a great chance to meet several of you. It was really cool to see some folks who have been with us for a long time. And it's funny, there were a couple other people that I ran into who were like, I'm on number 36, we're going through. And I decided, that we definitely need some kind of, I don't know, people who know Discord better can tell me this, but we need some kind of badge system, don't we? I mean, like, clearly we need I feel like the people who binge all like 180 hours or whatever it is to this point, and catch up with us and then join us live, like, that's a feat, right? That should be acknowledged in some kind of way. So we need some kind of like certificate or badge or something like this. This totally needs to happen. Exactly, Tony. Yeah, and then we can have a badge for like I've been live from the beginning and all those. Exactly. Yeah. That would be it kind of seems like this is a sufficient commitment one way and another, that it seems like it should be recognized. But anyway, yeah, awesome, cool, very good. Oh, so good to see several of you. And Ambrosius Aurelianus, I got a hello from you vicariously, from our mutual friend whom I got to talk to and actually hang out with a good deal more at Mythmoot this year, which was really fun. So that's pretty cool. And I see, Biotrom is here, with whom I think I got to have a nice barbecue lunch unexpectedly. Went into the closest barbecue place I could find for lunch, of course, on Saturday, and there he was eating lunch. So we had lunch together. That was cool. Yeah. Ooh, Harnuth, that's a good suggestion. Yeah. Standing Stone should create titles. Oh, there you go. There should be in-game titles for this. Yeah, that's absolutely. Yeah, that's a great suggestion. Oh, good. And yes, Sam, you're right. I totally neglected to change the title on the session tonight in Twitch, didn't I? So we just notified everybody that we're starting session 24 of Lamort Darthur class again, right? Yeah, well, people figure it out. We'll sort it. Well. Every single week when I do this, I'm always guaranteed to forget something. On the one hand, I've always been trying to be as inclusive as I can, and I've got now 4 different interfaces through which I take comments and things simultaneously from people and stuff. And anyway, so it's starting up class every week is this really complicated affair, and I'm always guaranteed to forget something. So there it was, Sam. We'll just have to live with it. I'll change it after the fact. I'll try to remember to change it after the fact. I'm sure that Druid's Fire will help me to remember. Okay. Anyway, let us begin here tonight. The first thing, of course, I wanted to mention was just to thank so many of you who came out at Mythmoot, which I've already done. Really, really wonderful time. And I wanted to talk about the future as we stare down now the rest of the first half of 2019, thinking about other regional moots and things that are coming up. So let me tell you what's happening here. So the next moot that's coming up is in Orlando on the 23rd of March. So March 23rd, we are doing a moot in Orlando, Florida. It's going to be called Sunshine Moot. I wanted to call it Gator Moot, but then I realized people would think it was like sponsored by the University of Florida, because it's actually going to be kind of close to the University of Florida. So anyway, but we're definitely going to be so it's going to be near Orlando, not in Orlando itself, but it's going to be near Orlando there. It's going to be Sunshine Moot on the 23rd of March, as I say, and we will have registration information for that and for our next moot after that very soon. Hopefully, I hope by as soon as next week. Because the next one coming up after Sunshine Moot is Nedermoot. Very exciting. Out in Amsterdam. Well, Leiden, near Amsterdam. We're going to be in the Netherlands this year, in Leiden, and that's going to be really, really cool. I hope you'll be able to, if those of you who are in those areas, we've not been to Florida, we've never been to the continent. We did go to London last year, which was pretty cool. We're venturing outside the UK now for the first time. So I hope that, those of you who are in the continental European area there can join us at Nedermoot. And that's going to be in the middle of April, is the dates on that. Now, Fourth Dauntless, it's funny you should mention New Zealand, because indeed we are planning to go to New Zealand. Kiwi Moot is scheduled for November 30th, 2019. So later this year in November. And that date, by the way, is the Saturday at the end of Thanksgiving week this year. Anyhow, yeah, so that's totally happening this year. So lots and lots of, there's going to be more between now and then, but it's going to be, anyway, so I'm hoping to see some of you in Orlando, and hoping to see some of you in the Netherlands, right? And maybe even some of you in New Zealand later on down the road. But the other thing that I wanted to tell you guys about, because this is the really big one. Now, James, Mythmoot is totally going to happen also. Probably in September is what we're thinking. And we haven't firmed the date on that one yet, James. Mythmoot in Massachusetts. So New England will finally get its moot here. The one that's actually local to me that I don't have to travel to. Yeah, that's the one that's been taking forever to put together. But we're looking at that probably September is what we're thinking of for that. So that's going to happen, and it's going to be really cool. But as I say, the really big news, and this is the really big news that is just out today, is, where did I put the big news? It's over here. Here's the big news. Mythmoot registration is open. Registration for Mythmoot 6. So for those of you who don't know, Mythmoot is our big event of the year. This is the big central event. We do our regional events because we really want to get a chance to connect with folks. We know that not everybody can travel to our big event, which we've been holding now for several years. So we've been having these smaller regional moots, which have been really, really cool and wonderful opportunities. But they're only like one day long. Right, Mythmoot is a big event. It's 3 full days, really sort of 3.5 days, because a lot of us show up on Thursday night and the party starts early. So basically Thursday evening through Sunday, and it is awesome. Mythmoot is just the best. It's so cool to be able to come to this event, have more than 3 times the amount of programming and getting to meet folks and everything that you get at one of our regional events. Plus, of course, we get more people coming in from all over the place. And like we're there, right? We're all staying, most of us are sort of staying there on the premises. So we get to share meals together and, hang out to the wee hours of the morning out by the sitting around the fire pits outside, and it's been such a wonderful time. I can't even tell you. The regional moots are really just kind of a taste of what you get at Mythmoot. Mythmoot is located, as it has been for the last 2 years, in Leesburg, Virginia. That's right near Dulles Airport, by the way, for those flying in. It's quite close to Dulles. Just wanted to share that the registration is open. A lot of people have been waiting for the registration to open. The registration is open this year. So if you just go this page, which I will here copy into the Twitch chat for people to see, is signumuniversity.org/Mythmoot. And yes, there's a great room to play games and otherwise wind down from the stress of being surrounded by people. Yes, the room of requirement. We added that last year, which was really, really cool. And Valori actually ran it last year. She did a wonderful job of that. So, yeah. Absolutely. So, And yeah, Dime, it is easy to get to with the airport near the conference center. Absolutely. Oh, cool. Oh, Tamsin is here. Great, Tamsin, I didn't see you before. Yes, Tamsin is helping to organize Kiwi Moot. Yes, we have live with us one of our Kiwi Moot organizers. Very cool. Anyway, yeah. Okay, good. So let's see. I think... There you go, Tirathorn. There you go. Hey, look. Druid's Fire beat you to it. Bam. Okay. All right. So, excellent. So wanted to make sure everybody knew Mythmoot is happening. The dates, as you can see, are June 27th to 30th. And if you go to this page, signumuniversity.org/Mythmoot, and scroll down, you can see Diana Glyer is one of our confirmed VIP guests this year. She's going to be coming and giving a keynote talk. If you don't know Diana Glyer's work, she's really wonderful. The company they keep is an excellent book. It's it's a book which talks about the Inklings as a writers group, essentially, as sort of their creative minds working in community. Really cool insights into the life and work of the Inklings. I think I really enjoy that book. I'm really looking forward to having Diana Glyer with us there. Okay, cool. All right. Whoa, Biotron, you produced the audiobook version of Bandersnatch? That is so cool. Yeah, nifty. Yeah, cool. Anyway, so you can see you've got the button here to register for Mythmoot. Also, there's a call for papers. There are lots of suggestions that we've made during the course of our class here, right? As we've been talking about different patterns and concepts and ideas that we've come across in the Fellowship of the Ring. Lots of potential things for good Mythmoot presentations. So there you go. That's right. I'm not quite sure, JJ, why they put the picture of me posing with the weapon. It's not meant to be threatening, but I guess it kind of fits with our theme, right, which is dragons this year. So I suppose if Mythmoot were to be attacked by an actual dragon, that's just how I would want to be armed, in fact. So it's all good. Anyhow, so as I say, this is the big mood. The big news here is Mythmoot, and yep, you can submit paper proposals. That's all set. Definitely. Okay. Yeah. Owe, that was it was fun taking pictures with the spear. That was when I decided that Signum we shouldn't have a mace, right? Yes, that is eyegloss, actually. Yes, it's the eyegloss that was made. It is such a gorgeous weapon, made for John DiBartolo. Anyway, yeah. So, but yes, a lot of universities have a ceremonial mace. It's like a thing. It was a thing anyway back in the 18th century. A lot of the older universities have one. But I've decided I don't want a ceremonial mace for Signum, and a ceremonial spear of that size, as awesome as it is, would be kind of challenging to travel with. But I'm thinking of we need a staff. We need like a good wizardly staff that I can carry in procession during our graduation ceremonies and things. That absolutely needs to happen at some point. Someday. Cool. All right. Yeah, see, a lot of... I think that the schools just sort of stole it from the governments. I think that the New Zealand Parliament, Tamsin says, and I think the British government, or Parliament as well, has a ceremonial mace. I think that's where they inherited the concept, basically. But yeah, I think it would be cool to have something, little bit less, fancy, a little more practical, frankly. I've seen some of those ceremonial maces, and I'm not scaring anybody with those. But a nice staff, nice wizardly staff, that would totally be the way to go. All right. Oh yeah, other thing, quickly. So several of you have been asking about the Tolkien exhibit in New York at the Morgan Library, right, which opens this weekend, which is really, really cool. Anyway, so I would so yeah, the questions people have been asking. So of course, for those of you who haven't heard of it, oh my gosh, look it up. Like, so you may have heard of the big exhibit that was over in the Bodleian. Most of it, not all of it, but most of it is coming to America and is going to be exhibited at the Morgan Library in New York City. And a lot of you have been asking, are we going to do something? Like, are we getting together? What's going on? So we tried it a while back to see if we could set up like an official New York moot to coincide with the Morgan exhibit. That was a little hard because, you know, of course it's challenging to get the space and stuff. So we've there are a couple things going on here. First, the New York City Tolkien Conference is holding a conference at the Morgan Library, and I'm planning to attend that. I think that's it's going to be a really cool conference. I recommend that you guys come then. And we're probably going to have a get-together. Not probably. We're definitely going to be planning on having a get-together then. I'll give you guys more details afterwards. So we're going to... And this actually is kind of better, right? Then they can organize the conference and we don't have to. And then we'll just have a party afterwards. So yeah, we're going to have a moot up. Yes, exactly, Mad Violinist. That's what we're going to do. So after the New York Tolkien conference at the Morgan, we'll go somewhere and we'll have dinner and a pint together and have a great time down there in New York. The other thing I wanted to draw your attention to, this is a totally separate event. This is a ticketed event, but I was invited to moderate a panel on the Tolkien exhibit. Just wanted to share that with you guys. This is at the Sheen Center for Thought and Culture in New York. It's affiliated with the Catholic Archdiocese of New York. And as you can see, the date on this one is Tuesday, February 12th at 7 p.m. So it's quite close, only a few weeks away. And I'm going to be, as I say, moderating a panel. The other people on the panel are going to be John T. McQuillan, who's the curator of the event at the Morgan, and Holly Ordway, a really great Tolkien scholar, who's done some work on Tolkien's visual imagination here and the sort of the connections between Tolkien's work and his Christianity. Really interesting stuff that Dr. Ordway is working on. So the three of us are going to be on this panel. We're going to be looking at different images from the collection and discussing and talking about those. It's going to be a really great time. So I just recommend that to you. If you just go to sheencenter.org, you can find that, but I will also post the link to that in the Twitch chat as well if you wanted to look into that. But as I say, we're gonna have a big get together in March in conjunction with the New York Tolkien Conference. This is a separate little smaller event, but I wanted to let you guys know it should be a really interesting conversation and a great evening. So I think tickets are like $20 for this event. So not that much, certainly, and by New York standards. So cool. All right. So this should be really cool. Those are I know lots of announcements today I had, but lots of cool stuff going on. Opening Mythmoot up and I wanted to give you guys an update on the other moots and everything. So in order to compensate for my spending a long time in announcements, I'm not going to do notes and queries today. There were some really good discussions on the discussion board, which I sort of recommend to you. I was particularly enjoying the discussion that you guys had on what the post is called Blue Collar Elves. It was about our sort of the discussion that we've been having about what do like elf servants do and how does that work? And I thought there were some really, really smart things that people were saying in that thread. So I really wanted to recommend that. I kind of didn't want to open that box again and talk about it more in class tonight. But as I say, I strongly recommend that. Also, Bruce Bricktails posted on Glorfindel's Bells. And I thought that was also... that was also a really good discussion as well. So just wanted to recommend some of those, but I don't have passages to quote for you here. So the discussion board, by the way, is on forums.signumuniversity.org. And if you go on there, you'll see there's a sub forum for Mythgard on Lotro, and we're the Exploring the Lord of the Rings one in there. So that's where you can find it. And that's where I go every week to look at people's comments in the Questions for Narnian subforum, and that's where I get the comments that most of the comments that I'm posting here. Some of them I'll get by email occasionally, or even occasionally by Twitter, but usually they're through the discussion forum there. All right, today we are approaching the Ford. Now I actually have the entire rest of Book 1 of the Fellowship of the Ring on slides tonight. We're not going to get there. I mean, there's no chance of it at all. But they're there, right? I'm ready. So basically, I've begun the countdown to the end of Book 1. So, we'll see how well we do here. Oh yes, and Bruinier Silm Film is on there too. That's also where you find the Silm Film discussion boards as well. Yep. Okay. Here we go. Well, JJ, it's not exactly the final countdown. It's like the first of many countdowns, really. But it's kind of a big deal, right? We've come to the ends of chapters before, but this is the first time we're coming to the end of a book, actually. So there we are. Okay. Cool. All right. Yes, the long leisurely sprint to the first major milestone. That's it. Okay. Let's jump right in then. They had rested rather less than 5 hours when they took to the road again. Glorfindel still urged them on, and only allowed 2 brief halts during the day's march. In this way, they covered almost 20 miles before nightfall, and came to a point where the road bent right and ran down towards the bottom of the valley, now making straight for the Bruinen. So far there had been no sign or sound of pursuit that the hobbits could see or hear, but often Glorfindel would halt and listen for a moment, if they lagged behind, and a look of anxiety clouded his face. Once or twice he spoke to Strider in the elf tongue. But however anxious their guides might be, it was plain that the hobbits could go no further that night. They were stumbling along, dizzy with weariness, and unable to think of anything but their feet and legs. Frodo's pain had redoubled, and during the day things about him faded to shadows of ghostly grey. He almost welcomed the coming of night, for then the world seemed less pale and empty. Okay. Yeah, Eternal Cow, and I still love your name there. Glorfindel is a hard taskmaster, right? It's one of the very striking things that we see when they are in the hands of Glorfindel, right? Is that he drives them along mercilessly. And it's you can see his urgency, right? Everything that he's been doing so far has been oriented towards getting them, and Frodo especially, to Rivendell as soon as possible, right? And I think that that by itself is interesting, right? I mean, we already talked about Glorfindel being able to resist the 9, right? And them withdrawing as he approaches. And yeah, it seems that he doesn't want to stand up to all 9 of them. You'd think that maybe, since he seems to have gone 1 on 5 without any problem, that he might go against all of the 9 with Aragorn and the hobbits, who are surprisingly resilient against Nazgul, with him. But that's not what he's thinking, right? What he's thinking here, I think, is simply all about getting Frodo out of there. And I go back to that thought that I had last week. The thing that I'd never really noticed before, our discussion last week about him putting Frodo on the back of Asphalloth, right? That he's not only thinking about helping Frodo escape, he's also thinking about overriding Frodo's own will, right? If Frodo were to choose to go running off towards the Nazgul, he will not have the power to do that, right? Asphalloth will take Frodo against his will, if necessary, to Rivendell. And it seems that Glorfindel's priority seems to be to sort of keep Frodo out of contact with them. Yeah, and JJ agreed. The hobbits are still horribly affected by the Nazgul as well. It's not that we would have any reason to think that Glorfindel would be cocky, right, and be like, "Bring on the Nazgul, we don't care." That's clearly not. That's clearly not how things would go here, right, and how he would think about it. Yeah. Now, I agree. Matt, that the point of view here is kind of interesting. Matt thinks that Frodo is the likely narrator, and the description of the day is as hazy as the description of Frodo's point of view at the end of the passage. We don't get much, right, about the day. We get very little details. One question I have: what do you think Glorfindel and Strider are talking about? See what I mean? He's speaking to Strider in the elf tongue. About what, do you think? Glorfindel would halt and listen if they lagged behind, and get a look of anxiety, and a look of anxiety clouded his face. What's he hearing or not hearing that is causing anxiety? Is this simply listening? He's just generally anxious and is listening while he's anxious in case he hears something, but he doesn't hear anything at the time? Or is there something? Luke, I also wonder if he can feel the wraiths approaching. That seems to me kind of likely. And actually, I really like that if he can kind of feel that they're getting closer, right? Then he's listening, because his ears will pick them up second, right? He can feel them first, his ears would hear them next, and then they would come into view, right? So he's maybe telling Strider, they're close, right? They're getting close. I can feel them coming nearer, but I don't hear them yet. Interesting. Let's see. Tony is and Fourth Dauntless too, suggesting maybe they're discussing Frodo's health, right? Maybe it's Frodo he's focused on, and whom he's talking to Strider about. And we know that Strider has been trying to keep up their spirits, especially about Frodo, especially with Sam, right? And if Glorfindel has very grave concerns, as there's plenty of reason for him to have, right? Then it would make sense that he would speak to Strider in the elf tongue. Though, interestingly, Frodo should be able to understand him at least a little bit, right? If they're talking in the elf tongue, but that's not. And actually, in that way, Matt, you could make an argument that this is a Sam passage for that reason, right? He spoke to Strider in the elf tongue. Kind of sounds like how Sam would describe it, whereas Frodo might be able to make something out of it, maybe. Sam might be too out of it. Marianne, I have to think that Glorfindel knows how close Frodo is to fading, or just watching him fade, right? Every reason to think that. Ambrosius Aurelianus is thinking that Glorfindel might be anxious that he's going to be replaced for the movies. Yeah, boy, a fear which will be so horribly borne out again and again. Yep. And yeah, Fourth Dauntless, it is possible, of course, that Frodo's too far gone to really process it. And Mad Violinist, I do agree that it's interesting, that Glorfindel doesn't do his searching the wound thing again, right? It suggests that, so how I take that, I have to assume, if this were something that he could just do, right? If he could, be like, clear, and, boom, and give Frodo a burst of whatever it was he gave him a burst of, like a little burst of warmth and hope in his shoulder, he'd be doing that regularly, right? But he doesn't do it, so I tend to think that that's not what's happening there, right? But instead, what Frodo was feeling was, sort of the will of Glorfindel. I'm not sure how to describe it. I want to use an outward. He's not drawing in, he's pushing out, right? But like striking out against the wound, right? Putting his will against the power of the wound. but I think he's done. I think he's done what he can, right? And he can't do more. It's not like okay, I gave you 5 extra hit points before. I can give you 5 extra hit points after a short rest. That's not what's happening, right? He did what his will was capable of doing against this wound, and it is apparently only very temporary, right? Yeah. Yeah, good. Right. But however anxious their guides might be, it was plain the hobbits could go no further that night. They were stumbling along, dizzy with weariness, unable to think of anything but their feet and legs. Tony, I think it was you who said this is a passage that was written by somebody who's been on nocturnal forced marches before. I think you're right about that. Right, Tolkien's war experience doubtless serving him here. I agreed. D-May, exactly. Glorfindel doesn't know about the shard of the weapon in the wound, right? And that's going to be what is the thing that's going to cure Frodo, is the finding and removal of that shard of blade. That would make sense of why Glorfindel is not able to do much more. Good. Yeah, Cecilia, I get that. And I think you're right. A couple other people were saying similar things, that Frodo being as wiped out as he is here, the idea that he can't, here's me being like, come on, why can't you translate the Elvish, Frodo, might be asking a little much. I get that. Absolutely. And sure, obviously Glorfindel is going to attempt surgery here, but again, you can see why he is, remember his comment to Sam, all the more, do I urge you to go on without rest. He knows that this is urgent. He knows this really needs Elrond's attention, right? So he's pushing for that. I agree that let's see, who was it who was talking about this? The welcoming the night, Mike. Welcoming the coming of night is very creepy and terrifying. I totally agree. During the day, things about him had faded to shadows of ghostly gray. That's what was happening before Glorfindel and his glowing white light showed up, right? Frodo was already beginning to see with his waking eyes, without wearing the ring, things in that wraith world, right? And shadows were coming in between him and his friends. Now everything about him is fading to shadows of ghostly gray again, and that he almost welcomed the coming of night. And I really love that whole expression there, Mike. Isn't that both unsettling and creepy, but also really poignant, right? He doesn't quite welcome the coming of night, right? But almost he does, right? He's this close to fading himself. For then the world seemed less pale and empty, right? The daytime is now pale and empty for him, and at night he can see better, right? And things what are more vibrant, right? He can see better. Keep in mind remember Gandalf has already told Frodo not to travel by night, right? And we begin to see why. If this is the world that the Nazgul are basically living in 24/7, they're going to be mostly blind during the day, and see much better at night. Wheel Rider thinks that next he'll be cursing the yellow face. Exactly, something like that. Tony, I think definitely Glorfindel can see the slight fading in transparency that Gandalf perceived later. I think that Glorfindel can perceive this here. Yeah, yeah. Oh, hey, Lady Schmebuak. Got to meet Lady Schmebuak in Texas too. Good to see you here again. Oh, Lincoln says, now comes the night, right? Not quite. Almost he welcomed the night, right? Yeah. Yeah, and I agree. What is it? Tirathorn. I agree, Tirathorn, that the Nazgul will have grown accustomed to operating in the daytime when they need to, absolutely. But again, you can still see why it is they are less likely to get spotted, right, and to have trouble with the Nazgul during the day than during the night. Yeah. And Mike, I suspect that you're right. He has Frodo on the back of Asphaleth so that he can send him off at a moment's notice, right? But yeah, he doesn't want to just send him off right now because he doesn't know. Maybe they're not coming up from behind, right? Maybe they've come around in front. Maybe if he just sends Frodo galloping down the road, maybe he's going to be galloping straight into a bunch of Nazgul, right? So he, he's waiting to pull the trigger on, the escape to Rivendell plan. But if he sends him off too early, then he's just sending Frodo off alone with the elf horse, right? Which is not nearly the same as just all by himself. But still. And JJ, I think the Nazgul's spot checks are penalized by a good deal more than -1 during daylight. I think I would personally give him a -5 to spot checks myself, but yeah, or disadvantage on spot checks, that'll work. Yeah, now Darren, great question. What does it mean? Hang on a second, Darren. You are up. What are you up late or early? Holy cow! I was just processing that you're here, Darren. So Darren's in England, or at least it's where you usually are, Darren. I don't know. Maybe you're on the road. Up late. My goodness, yes. Anyway, so Darren says, what does it mean when Frodo perceives the world as empty? Yeah, that's a really great point. For then the world seemed less pale and empty. Empty, I take to mean primarily that he, the shadows coming between him and his friends, he can't see the living world around him. And I would think that he is primarily aware of his, aware of sort of the shortcomings of his vision, right? It's daylight. He's used to seeing the stuff around him, and he can't, because of course it's not just that he's being given access and being allowed to see into the shadow world. He's also getting cut off from the regular living world. So the world around him looks empty because of that shadow that has fallen between him and everything else, right? And he just can't see it anymore. And that's interesting, Kit. Kit suggests that he's taking less interest in his friends. Perhaps. We don't see him worrying about his friends. Yeah, I think the people about him are fading to shadows of ghostly gray. But Darren, perhaps that's what Kit was referring to. Things about him faded to shadows of ghostly gray, that we see him not showing as much concern, right? Before, the way that described was the shadow would come between him and his friends, right? And now there's not a reference to his friends, just things around him. The trees, the grass, the horse, his friends, all of the things are in this sort of same category here. Now, I think Cecilia, it was you who just posted that is interesting. So this is in response to who was it? Darren. Yeah, to Darren's comment about the world being empty. And Cecilia was remembering that there's an interesting parallel between that and what we will see from Frodo in Mordor later on, right? When he can't remember anything, any of the happy and good things, right? There's it's sort of an interesting parallel, I think. Yeah, cool. Yeah, good. Yeah, Tony says this is also like depression. Yeah, yeah. I mean, all of the hobbits seem to be kind of turned in on themselves. Merry and Pippin and Sam are unable to think of anything but their feet and legs, right? As they're just staggering along, barely conscious, as they keep moving here. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. The hobbits were still weary when they set out again early next morning. There were many miles yet to go between them and the ford, and they hobbled forward at the best pace they could manage. "Our peril will be greatest just ere we reach the river," said Glorfindel, "for my heart warns me that the pursuit is now swift behind us, and other danger may be waiting by the ford." The road was still running steadily downhill, and there was now in places much grass at either side, in which the hobbits walked when they could to ease their tired feet. In the late afternoon they came to a place where the road went suddenly under the dark shadow of tall pine trees, and then plunged into a deep cutting with steep, moist walls of red stone. Echoes ran along as they hurried forward, and there seemed to be a sound of many footfalls following their own. All at once, as if through a gate of light, the road ran out again from the end of the tunnel into the open. There at the bottom of a sharp incline they saw before them a long flat mile, and beyond that the Ford of Rivendell. On the further side was a steep brown bank, threaded by a winding path, and behind that the tall mountains climbed, shoulder above shoulder, and peak beyond peak, into the fading sky. Okay. Yeah, good. Ooh, interesting. Kyle Winiecki says it's almost similar to what Huron experiences on Thangarodrim, seeing the world as Morgoth and Sauron see the world, right? When he sort of sees the world through Morgoth's eyes, right? That Frodo's experience here is almost like that. That is interesting. I hadn't really thought of that. Of course, I mean, it's not obviously it's not the same phenomenon. I know you don't mean that Huron is undergoing the same prize. Huron's not being wraithified, right? But it is interesting. And Kyle, the main thing that to me suggests sort of something along those lines is that idea of the shadow passing between Frodo and his friends, right? It's not just like, I can't see anybody anymore, right? Something has intervened. Something is preventing him seeing like he normally saw. This shadow is, right? And of course, I'm thinking back, Matt, to the wonderful paper that you gave at Magnolia Moot, thinking about what is Sauron's magic? Like, what is it? How does it work? What evidence can we see from the text about how that functions? And this image of the shadow, and the shadow coming in between things and lying on things and stuff like that is very much was a big part of what Matt was discussing. It was a really, really good paper. Yeah, good. Excellent. Okay, so Glorfindel's heart warns him that the pursuit is now swift behind us. A couple weeks back, we had a long discussion about the use of the word heart in The Lord of the Rings. This happened during my Grifflet stream. I think it was 2 weeks ago. Might have been 3. I can't remember. But anyway, just recently we had this discussion about what the word heart means when Tolkien uses it in The Lord of the Rings. And we were, people were sort of throwing different quotations at me. We were making a bunch of observations and some different categories of things. And this is definitely one of those, what I was calling category 1, because it was the first one that I thought of the use of heart. And that is this sort of foreboding of the future, that when, Tolkien uses the word heart, my heart warns me, when someone has some kind of spiritual sense, whether it be a spiritual sense of a foreboding of what's going to happen in the future, as like, Aragorn sometimes does, right? Or whether it's like Gandalf's heart telling him that something wasn't right about the ring, right? Remember, we got some of that back in chapter 2. That is, I think, very clearly the sense in which Glorfindel is using it here. My heart warns me that the pursuit is now swift behind us. He just has a sense. So here's my question for this, because I'm not quite sure what I think about this. My heart warns me that the pursuit is now swift behind us. Does this mean, Amy, yes, I agree. Like intuition or foresight is exactly what heart in this sentence seems to be connected to. But anyway, okay, so when Glorfindel says, my heart warns me that the pursuit is now swift behind us, I can't decide whether this makes it more or less likely that Glorfindel can actually sense the approach of the Nazgul. I can kind of see it either way, right? I mean, if he does just sense that they're not too far away and approaching, right? Maybe that's what he means when he says, my heart warns me that the pursuit is now swift behind us. But given that that whole my heart warns me construction tends to be things that people use, Amy, exactly like you said, for a foreboding or an intuition. If he can actively perceive it, then he wouldn't say it that way, right? He wouldn't say, my heart warns me that the pursuit is now swift behind us. He'd say, like, my spidey senses tell me, right? Or, my elf lord senses tell me that the pursuit is, that is, this kind of sounds like he's making a prediction or communicating a foreboding rather than that he's relaying some kind of sensory experience, right? It could be a mix of both, Darren. It's possible that he has been sensing them, their distant presence, if that is not a contradiction in terms, right? He's feeling them still at a distance. Can't tell. I mean, it's not a finely calibrated sense, right? So he can't like triangulate and figure out exactly how far they are away. He just kind of knows that they're there and he knows that they're approaching. And so maybe he starts with that, and then his heart warns him that the pursuit is now swift, right? That they're approaching quickly. Yeah. Interesting. Cecilia speculating, maybe he says it that way, my heart warns me, just because it'll be easier for the hobbits to understand. Easier for the hobbits to say, my intuition tells me that they're coming, rather than saying, I can perceive them, don't ask me how, it's complicated, no, you can't do this except maybe Frodo, and that's a really bad sign, so let's move on. Maybe that would just be sort of quicker in that way. Yeah. Yeah. Good. Yeah. Mad Violina says, if the sense of presence is there but below conscious perception, it would or could manifest as prediction. Sure. Yeah. I think if it's at all accessible by his conscious mind, it would be, right? I mean, he's clearly orienting himself. If he has antenna, he's got them oriented back down the road, right? Trying to sense the Nazgul. So I don't think it would be unconscious on his part, but anyway. Brunier is wondering if his heart told him that only that no man is gonna kill the Witch King. Probably, though he didn't phrase it that way, right? Yeah. Lady Schmebuak, I agree. Somebody doing a comic of Glorfindel's elf lord senses going off, that would be good. I agree. Oh, interesting. JJ says, yeah, and that's kind of like what I was saying before, but I think she says it better here. Maybe he can sense that the Nazgul are near, but his heart tells him they've picked up the trail and are rushing toward them. Yeah, so he can't get that much detail from his elf lord senses, but his heart tells him that that's what's going on. Cool. All right. Excellent. Yeah, Tamsin, that is a really interesting question. When he says other danger may be waiting by the ford, what does that exactly mean? Tamsin says, is it like, does he just mean other Nazgul, right? Or is he thinking of something else? I agree that the use of other is interesting. I don't think he's necessarily... I wouldn't speculate that necessarily meant that he's imagining the Nazgul have brought some kind of backup and it's waiting by the ford, right? Probably, since he says the pursuit is swift behind us and other danger may be waiting by the ford, I assume that in both cases he's talking about the Nazgul. But I agree, it is a slightly odd... Do you think he's thinking like Gildor here, like he doesn't want to name them lest terror should keep them from their road? I mean, like, it's not like it's going to be a secret exactly, but is he being indirect just because he's trying to freak them out? Yeah, Tony, I agree. I've got a bad feeling about this. Would be fairly good. I think that's clearly if Han Solo were in the Lord of the Rings, he would probably say instead, my heart tells me that my heart forebodes ill. It might be perhaps what Han Solo would say in Middle Earth. Yeah, cool. Okay. Yeah, good. Tirathorn is wondering, why is it here called the Ford of Rivendell instead of the Ford of Bruinen? That's a really interesting point, and I would say that I think it's important. The Ford of Bruinen, of course, the river is the Bruinen, right? And the ford is the ford in it. So Ford of Bruinen is perfectly descriptive, right? But it is also the Ford of Rivendell, right? In that it's the ford that you cross on the way to Rivendell, but obviously in a greater sense than that, right? Obviously, Elrond of Rivendell has a more significant relationship with the river Bruinen, right? And I think that's what is being hinted at there in calling it the Ford of Rivendell. This is special. This ford is in a special way like the doorstep to Rivendell, right? If they can cross, and I think that there's a reason. I think there's a reason why the Nazgul are all trying to get them on this side of the ford, right? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, JJ says it really well. Their focus is less on the geographic feature and more on the safety that it marks. Yeah, I think that's a good way to think about it there too. But Penloth, I mean, you're right. It makes it really conspicuous, right? Because you still have to find Rivendell, right? It's not like it's the boundary of Rivendell or something, or as soon as you cross the Ford of Rivendell, congratulations, you're in Rivendell. No, it's actually still quite a journey from there, right? And like Gandalf has a hard time finding the entrance to Rivendell in The Hobbit. So yeah, it is, I think, there, significant. It's not just a geographical boundary, therefore. Calling it the Ford of Rivendell, I think, foreshadows the, as I said, more significant relationship there. Yeah. Trifle, yeah, something like a day's journey, exactly, is what we see. Yeah. Okay, cool. All right, let's look at that description. I am with, I forget who it was a while back, but I am with you, whichever one of you it was, who said that you had never really noticed the cutting that they're going through. Yes, it's easy to, I find, sometimes modern readers, of which I am one, are kind of impatient and often tend to kind of glaze over at Tolkien's landscape descriptions and not really do the work of actually picturing what Tolkien is describing, right? Sometimes I catch myself having done that. Even when I know the words and phrases really well, I will still sometimes realize, okay, actually I didn't really picture everything that he described there. But the description here is really interesting. Look at the sort of shape of this again, right? The road is running downhill, and for a while there's grass on either side, which is refreshing to the hobbits' feet, right? And then it's late afternoon, so the sun is going down, it's starting to get dark, and then the road goes under the shadow of tall pine trees. So it's already darkening, right? Or at least, the sun is westering, and then they enter the shadow of the tall pine trees. Now, it's just pine trees, right? Nothing especially malevolent about pine trees, and yet again, with all of the whole shadow coming over Frodo's vision and stuff, right? The idea of them being overshadowed as the sun is going down feels a little bit ominous, right? And then they plunge, right? Not just enter into a cutting, they plunge into a deep cutting with steep, moist walls of red stone. Moist is the word I'm most interested in there, right? What a wonderful, almost like tactile description, right, of these walls, and the echoes, right? They can hear the echoes of their own feet. Notice, of course, this is not the only time in this book that they are going to hear what sounds at first like echoes of their own feet, and later turns out to be, in fact, something following them, right? We will get that again in a more famous place later on down the road, exactly, Mad Violinist in Moria. But it's interesting that we see it here first, right? That sense of, it's probably just our own footsteps and the footsteps of Bill and Asphaleth that we're hearing, right? Now, Marianne, that's a good question. Marianne asks, is a cutting a tunnel? The word cutting, here I just kind of passed over that. It's interesting, isn't it? Because the word cutting was a very, very common word in the first half of the 20th century in England, right? If you're in 20th century England and you're using the word cutting, what are you describing, right? What does that word apply to generally? Yeah, a man-made cutout, usually for a railway, Mike, exactly, yeah. A railway cutting. It was very, very common. Yeah, so exactly, Mad Violinist. It's an open-roofed passage where the road is cut through rock. Yeah. But it's called cutting because people actually cut it, right? It's artificial. It's carved out in order to make way for the train, right? Yeah. So, Marianne, I never thought of that in my life before. Is this artificial? Was this actually made? We know that the road has been passing through, there have been cliffs on either side before. Yeah. Corey Schwab says her dad's a highway engineer and uses that term all the time. Sure, yeah, no, definitely they use it for highways all the time too. And it is a lot of work without power tools or dynamite, ardent crayon, I can only imagine, right? Yeah, Mad Violinist, I agree. The more we think about it, it almost has to be actually artificial, right? Otherwise it wouldn't be called cutting. it's possible. The only thing that I can think is that it's possible that Tolkien, in describing it, is like comparing it to a cutting, because that will help his readers to picture it more clearly. Not that it was actually cut, but it is, a little cleft. The road passes through this little cleft valley, which looks as if it were a cutting, right? But there's nothing really in the language that suggests that he's using it metaphorically, right? Yeah. Now, Penlove, I agree, the men of Arnor would be more than capable of making a cutting for the road, as would the dwarves, presumably, right? Arden Crayon points out that compared to carving out Moria, a little cutting through the through these moist red walls here would not actually be that big of a that big of a challenge. Darren, the word moist here does make me wonder if it could be a gully formed by water erosion. I think that's very possible. Yeah. Tony, the dwarves aren't wanting to go to Rivendell, but this is still the dwarf road, right? The dwarves are the original ones who made this road. Or at least they're the ones who get credit for it. It's called the dwarf road. They wouldn't. So they were just headed towards the mountains, which are right there, right? Besides which, you wouldn't necessarily want a highway with cuttings and everything heading to your, secret valley, right? So I don't think the elves would necessarily do this. I'm not sure the elves would make a cutting anyway. Cuttings don't seem like elvish kinds of things, do they? Yeah. And good, yeah, Sharon and who else was talking about the tunnel? Somebody else was talking about the word tunnel. Anyway, Marianne. Okay. Oh, that's why I couldn't find it scrolling back. It was over there. All at once, through a gate of light, the road ran out again from the end of the tunnel into the open. Okay, so now here I'm thinking about metaphor again. Nothing in the description that I can see before that point leads me to believe that it is an actual tunnel, like that there's stone above them. They're under the shadow of pine trees. They plunge into a deep cutting, but again, a cutting is open. That's the difference between a cutting and a tunnel, right? So the fact that he calls it a deep cutting, but it's a deep cutting, and so they're almost surrounded. You could see there'd be like a sort of narrowish strip of sky up above them, right? And then, as if through a gate of light, and that is a wonderful phrase, isn't it, Marianne? As on a gate of light, the road ran out again from the end of the tunnel into the open. Trees could be growing a roof over them, Tony. That is possible. Okay, so I think that tunnel has to be at least somewhat metaphorical. Oh, that was Amy. Sorry, Marianne. Yeah. It's my one regret that the interface that I'm using, I can't easily scroll backwards. I only see your comments as they come in. So it's challenging for me to go back and check. I just have to kind of remember. But anyway, the trees could be covering over them, but apart from that, I don't think they're in a tunnel. Again, I think that that's a metaphor which is designed to emphasize the fact that the whole gate of light thing, they were in the shadow and in the darkness, and then they pass out into the light. They're definitely on the road, capital R, Darren. Absolutely. This is the dwarf road that they've been following. Well, or trying to avoid following. But anyway, that has gone from Bree, right? The road that crossed the Greenway right at Bree, the road which of course goes right through the Shire, right, and on which dwarves still travel sometimes, which crosses the Brandywine Bridge. Yeah. Ooh, hang on, Tony. I don't think he can be seeing Frodo can be seeing the light in front of him as a tunnel. It's really cool to think about that being reversed. But I don't really think so. Instead, again, I think that the word tunnel is being used mostly metaphorically here, as we convey he's conveying this sense of not just closeness, right? But also of darkness. That's really, I think, the most important thing here. Remember, the sun gets to afternoon, then they pass under the shadows of the trees, the shadows emphasized there, and then in between the walls, and maybe there are trees up above them more too. It is dark in where they are, right? That's clearly the emphasis with the gate of light, right? All at once, as if through a gate of light, the road ran out again from the end of the tunnel into the open. There at the bottom of a sharp incline, they saw before them a long flat mile, and beyond that, the Ford of Rivendell. And yeah, again, one of you was saying this a while back. A mile, that's a fair jog for an exhausted hobbit, right? It's going to take the hobbits on foot a while to cross that much space, right? Yeah, Arden Cran, I agree. If it's afternoon, the sun is going down, the sun isn't directly overhead, it's going to be blocked from the side. It's going to be quite dark down there in that tunnel when they start hearing the echoes of what sounds like echoes of their own feet, right? So I do think it's primarily about the light. And interesting to me that the light is the thing that's emphasized here, right? Their approach to the ford is a long, flat, open mile that is full of light, right? The conditions favor the good guys here as they come into the final stretch down to the ford. Yeah, exactly, Ermabwed. I agree. It's definitely narrow and steep walls that we're having described here. It wouldn't be very echoey otherwise. Yeah, and I agree with you guys. It's going to be you got to think at least 20 minutes. Maybe if they manage to summon up enough energy to jog, it's going to be much more, it can be a little quicker than that. But yeah. As Crystal Haywin says, or about 3 seconds in Lotro. Yeah, exactly. The whole scale problem. Yeah, good. Yeah, Tony, now you're right that this is also a good place for an ambush. But notice, I get that I think is one of the important things here. What they've just come out of is a good place for an ambush, right? You'd think if the Nazgul were going to ambush them, it would be here, in the cutting, right? Where they could be penned in very easily on either side, and they're already in the shadows and darkness, even in the middle of the day, right? That would be this would be the place. So in some ways, I think that we can see the fact that they make it to the Gate of Light justifies, would seem to justify Glorfindel's slave driving here, right? The cruel taskmaster pace that he has set them at, because they've made it, right? They've made it through. They've made it into the open. Asphaleth is at least going to be pretty hard to catch, right, on the long flat open mile, because presumably if it's a long flat mile, he wouldn't even necessarily have to stay on the road. Where again, in the cutting, he'd be penned in. Right here, he'd be able to maneuver. Right, so I think that would be good. Yeah, and Matt, I agree. It doesn't it feel like this is it, right? there's another danger that awaits them. I mean, this looks like a terrible, terrible place, right? Yeah, yeah. And Evil Dr. Cannon, I agree. Great to meet you in Texas, Evil Dr. Cannon. Yeah, Evil Dr. Cannon was explaining he got his name because his name is actually Dr. Cannon, and his students told him that it sounded like a comic book villain, Dr. Cannon. So he uses the screen name, the Evil Dr. Cannon. I think it's pretty cool. Anyway, but I agree. It proved that Glorfindel's heart had pretty good senses, right? That he predicted others waiting at the ford and not in the cutting. Yeah. Yeah, good. Aaron Mabwed, that's a really good question. It does say a long, flat mile. And Ermabwed is wondering if it's referring to a rough estimation that the distance is a mile or longer, or that it's about a mile, or which looks a long way with the pressing dread of pursuit. I kind of suspect that it means it's probably, I mean, this is not a precise measure, right? It may be a mile and a quarter. I suspect it's a little more than a mile, actually. And I do think that that's what he means when he says a long mile, right? It's about a mile, probably a little more than a mile. Kind of reminds me American football commentators tend to use that same expression when the ball is like a yard and a half away from the first down. They'll say like third down and a long one. Have you heard them say that? Right. I think that's kind of the same thing that I say here. It's about a mile, right? Well, rounding up a little bit, right? It's a long mile to the ford. That is exactly how I would take that too. So yeah, this is a substantial hike for the hobbits. Yeah, good. Now, it's interesting. Johannes is thinking that maybe they don't ambush them in the tunnel because they're trying to separate. They're trying to separate Frodo from the rest of them, right? So if they were to ambush them at either end of this cutting, then they would be succeeding in penning the ring bearer in with the elf lord and the ranger, right, and even the other three little hobbits who may also have scary burning red flaming swords, which of course they do, in fact. So yeah, it's that. You can see how this would be, on the one hand, a really great ambush spot, but also perhaps from the once burned, twice shy Nazgul perspective here, perhaps not, in fact, the best ambush spot, right? Let's maybe get them into the open where we can try to cut Frodo away from the herd here. Yeah. Yes, Darren, they are facing east here, looking at the mountains, so the sun would be setting behind them. Though it seems like it's not too low down. I don't think it's sunset here, based on the Gate of Light would be, if you're coming out of the eastward end, right, of a steep cutting that's like a tunnel, and the sun were setting behind you, I don't think it would look like a Gate of Light in the same way, right? But anyway. And yes, Penloth, I agree. You wouldn't really want to see Glorfindel cornered. At least I can't believe that the Nazgul who withdraw at his approach would be very excited about that. Okay. All right. I love the description of the mountains. On the further side was a steep bank threaded by a winding path, and behind that the tall mountains climbed, shoulder above shoulder and peak beyond peak, into the fading sky. Yeah, Amy says, I think it's another reason why Glorfindel wanted to keep everyone together. Yeah, that does seem to me likely, for defense. Absolutely. Yeah, Trifle says, the last time he got cornered, he took down a Balrog. So true, right? Maybe they do know what happens if Glorfindel gets cornered, right? Maybe they've heard rumors about this. Yeah, anyway. I'm not sure what to say about the description of the mountains. It strikes me as important. but I'm not sure. It is beautiful, Iwendilian, I agree. The description of the mountains marching off into the, up there behind them. One of the reasons that I think I'm kind of slightly fixating on it is that I can't help but remember that bit at the beginning of chapter 3 of The Hobbit, right? When Bilbo sees the Misty Mountains for the first time on his approach to Rivendell, and he asks, like, is that the mountain, right? And they're like, no, that's nothing like. Luke, I think that's a good way to think of it. It's sort of thinking in conjunction with the Hobbit stuff. Luke says they've come a long way. The mountains used to be on the edge of Hobbit stories, right? Marching on the edge of Hobbit stories, and now they're right in front of them. Yes, this sort of... the mountains are, of course, another one of those legends, right? That is coming to life here. And this would be fairly dramatic, especially as they're sort of descending down... they've been surrounded by trees and they come out of this tunnel, right? And there's the open descent down to the ford, and all of a sudden the mountains would be right there, right? I can't help but think that this is also kind of a sense of I don't know, like there's something greater. The ford has been their goal, right? They keep talking about the ford. Aragorn kept talking about the ford. Glorfindel's kept talking about the ford, right? We may find that the ford is already held against us. If we ever hope to reach the ford of Bruin, right? They've been focused on, it's all been all about the ford, right? Ever since they left Weathertop, essentially, right? And so now they get to the ford and they see, and look, there's the ford, right? We get the description of the ford, but the ford itself gets like beyond the ford are the mountains, for crying out loud, right? The Misty Mountains. And I agree, Luke, I do think that it's very important that what they're seeing is, again, a legend of the Shire come true, right? The Misty Mountains from old Mr. Bilbo's stories, they're looming up in front of them. It's a really big deal, right? But again, the thing that the position here, the fact that when they finally get to the long-awaited ford, the ford itself is dwarfed, right? It's not the ford that they're looking at. It's the mountains on the far side of the ford. And it gives me the sense, the sense of having come to this thing upon which all of their hopes were placed and which has been their destination. They see behind that something much greater, much grander, this sense of the world that comes beyond that. Iwendilian, like an unknown world on the other side of that boundary. Yeah, something like that. It doesn't sound threatening, right? I don't think that this necessarily is meant to be intimidating, right? Like behind that is like the mountains looming down on them and looking terrifying. I don't think that that's necessarily it. I would want to say sort of greater, right? And yeah, DMA, since the ford is the boundary and crossing the ford has been associated with safety and reaching Rivendell all the way through, and of course, by having just called it the Ford of Rivendell, just in the previous sentence, Tolkien would seem to be emphasizing that again. And Marianne, I agree. They're described majestically as being majestic, not threatening. DMA says, again, it's been safety. It's been the boundary, right? It's been, if you can cross the ford, then you'll be safe. So therefore, the mountains on the far side would seem to me to be associated with that safety in some sense. I don't know if that's exactly, right. That's what I'm kind of playing with, though. I would think it would be an encouraging thought, the majesty of the mountains, really, right? Because of course, even the Nazgul themselves are the mountains are bigger than the Nazgul, right? If what is on the other side of the ford is safety, if what is on the other side of the ford is if that's been associated with safety and healing and friends and all those things, then what they see actually on their side of the ford are the mountains, right? And that would seem to make, to sort of imaginatively, if not associate, right, the mountains with those allies that they are working to get towards, right? I don't know. I don't want to put too much pressure on it, but I think that's the general sense that sentence was given to me here this time through. Hey, want to do something reckless and crazy? Let's do a third slide. Because we can. There was still an echo as of following feet in the cutting behind them, a rushing noise as if wind were rising and pouring through the branches of the pines. One moment Glorfindel turned and listened, then he sprang forward with a loud cry. "Fly!" he called. "Fly! The enemy is upon us!" The white horse leaped forward. The hobbits ran down the slope. Glorfindel and Strider followed as rear guard. They were only halfway across the flat when suddenly there was a noise of horses galloping. Out of the gate in the trees they had just left rode a black rider. He reined his horse in and halted, swaying in his saddle. Another followed him, and then another, and then again 2 more. "Ride forward! Ride!" cried Glorfindel to Frodo. He did not obey at once, for a strange reluctance seized him. Checking the horse to a walk, he turned and looked back. The riders seemed to sit upon their great steeds like threatening statues upon a hill, dark and solid, while all the woods and land about them receded as if into a mist. Suddenly he knew in his heart that they were silently commanding him to wait. Then at once fear and hatred awoke in him. His hand left the bridle and gripped the hilt of his sword, and with a red flash he drew it. Okay. Karita, I agree. Glorfindel tells them to fly, so the only possible explanation is that hobbits have wings. I think we've just proved it, right? That's it. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, good. So, by the way, clearly a tunnel of trees, right? Clearly a tunnel of trees. Whether the trees are at the top of the cutting or not, it's not clear. But again, I think it's pretty fairly clear that tunnel is metaphorical. Yeah. So I love the description of the echoing feet. There was still an echo as of following feet in the cutting behind them, a rushing noise as if a wind were rising and pouring through the branches of the pines. Yeah. Oh, Ardent Crayon, Frodo's sword isn't broken yet. It didn't break at Weathertop. He dropped it, but it didn't break. It's about to, but it didn't yet. Yeah. One moment Glorfindel turned and listened, then he sprang forward with a loud cry. I love that description of this, as if the wind were rising and pouring through the branches of the pines. Remember what the pines were associated with before? Darkness, shadow, that tunnel of darkness out of which they emerged, right? And now it's as if the shadow underneath the pines is itself racing through and whistling through the branches of the pines in pursuit of them. I love that. I love that sense of like the shadow itself is now coming like a wind after you down the tunnel. The enemy is upon us, and the white horse leaps forward. Everybody runs. Glorfindel and Strider riding, following behind as rear guard, right, as the hobbits are running down the slope. They were only halfway across the flat. Halfway across the flat. So they're halfway across the long mile. I barely even noticed that phrase ever before. When suddenly there was a noise of horses galloping. They finally hear it, right? They finally hear the actual Black Rider's horses, right? And then out of the gate in the trees they had just left rode a Black Rider. So the Black Rat, presumably the Witch King, right, comes out of the tunnel of trees when they are already more than halfway across the flat. So they have run over, a good half mile, right, at least a half mile towards the ford. Ermabwed, it is interesting, isn't it, that Glorfindel sprang forward with a loud cry, but then holds back his rear guard, right? He's not actually leading the way. He's letting the horse lead the way. Ambrosius Aurelianus, that rushing sound is not the sound of hoofbeats, right? Because when they hear that, they describe that as they hear the sound of a galloping horse, right? It's just the wind, right? But it's not just the wind, I think, clearly. That seems to be wind, right? Oh, interesting. Matt suspects that the they halfway across the flat is Frodo and Asphiloth. Maybe. I don't know. I mean, the immediate antecedent is the hobbits and Glorfindel and Strider. But maybe. Yeah, see, Luke, I'm thinking of the Black Breath, too. Not that that's like, one huge, massive gust of Black Breath, and the Black Breath doesn't exactly... It's not the same as the gust of wind spell. But I agree with you. That association with, again, the shadow under the trees and the wind, right? It certainly makes me think of the Black Breath as well. Now, Tirathorn, I agree that Frodo doesn't ride with speed until the next slide. You know what I'm thinking, guys? You know what I'm thinking, right? You guys know what I'm thinking here. We need to reenact this, obviously, right? We need to reenact this. But for this, we're gonna need a horse trifle, absolutely, and we're gonna need there's going to be some aerobic activity involved in this reenactment, right? Tim Dolph, this does kind of sound like a Mythmoot activity, doesn't it? Yeah. I think we'll have to try this. Yeah. And we'll see. There's a lot of space at Mythmoot. I'm sure we can figure it out. Yeah, it belongs Mond, you're right. We'll have to sign waivers. Right. Absolutely. Yeah, we'll have to see. We'll have to see. Yeah. Oh, good. Tirathorn, you're right. We'll have to make sure the participants are tired from multiple days of forced marches first, just in order to get it maximally verisimilitudinous, right? I totally agree. Yeah, that's very good. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, Arden Crayon says it sounds like an algebra test, right? If Frodo and Asphiloth are going, 10 miles an hour, and the Nazgul are pursuing at, 20 miles an hour, and yeah. Anyway, we'll see. It'll be more fun to reenact it, but we'll see. So Matt's suggesting that he thinks it's definitely Frodo's point of view. The halfway out is definitely Frodo's point of view, because let's see. Because he's saying that Frodo is checking Asphiloth's speed, right? And he can't imagine Frodo being able to get away with that while Glorfindel was near. Maybe. Okay, hang on. Glorfindel is still in shouting distance, though. A theory. My theory is... Said Glorfindel springs forward with a loud cry. The white horse leaped forward. Okay, that's a sentence that's kind of hard to deal with in some ways here. Theory. If Frodo and Asphaleth are still basically staying with the family, right? So I'm imagining Asphaleth is not galloping yet, right? Asphaleth has been walking, clearly, right? Because the hobbits are keeping up, right? So Asphaleth has been walking and probably not fast. And he's in front. I think he's clearly in front, right? That's definitely where Glorfindel would have Asphaleth in this procession, right? So that no hobbits are trampled if he has to, cry out Norolim, right? So Asphaleth is in front, but he's walking, and he's walking slowly. So he would speed up from a walk to a trot. Hey, horse people, help me with this. What kind of horse pace would be roughly equivalent to a sprinting hobbit? Right? If the hobbit is sprinting, how fast would a horse be going? Trotting? Right? Would he leap forward from a walk into a trot? Does that make a lick of sense? I speak of that, which I don't know. A canter? Could hobbits canter? I mean, could they sprint and keep up vaguely with a canter? He would have to be, he wouldn't have to be like right with them, right? But he'd have to be still within easy calling distance, right, of them. A slow canter, something like that. Yeah, I'm thinking, because he's not really going to put on the jets until later on, right? Yeah. Evil Dr. Cannon, no, I'm not referring to centaurs when I say horse people. I just mean equestrians, right? Yeah. I don't think that Frodo. So here's another reason I don't think that Asphaleth is galloping yet, because I don't think that Frodo has the gumption to rein him in, right? I mean, he reined the horse in and halted, swaying in his saddle, right? I think if Asphaleth is galloping at this point, I don't think there's a thing that Frodo could do about that. I don't think that Frodo is pulling him up to a halt from a gallop, right? I think he has to be going. I think he has to be going slower than that, right? Yeah. Yeah. So let's go with cantering for now, right? Trifle says, if the horse is still obeying its rider, you don't need strength. Yes. Yeah, Mike, it's a good way of thinking of it. Mike says, so far Asphaleth is listening to his rider, default instructions from his master, new instructions to follow on the next slide. Yeah. All right. Okay, Darren is suggesting horse would trot at about 8 miles an hour and canter at 10 to 17 miles an hour. So a slow canter would still be something that, I mean, it's pretty fast, but it's not, it's still sprintable, right? Still sprintable. And it would still seem like leaping forward, right? It would, if you were doing a slow walk and then all of a sudden, Glorfindel says, fly, the enemy is upon us, and Asphaleth takes off into a canter. That's, yeah. Mad Violinist points out that pace, the slow canter pace, would be about the pace for a 6-minute mile, which is very respectable for a humans, right? So presumably they couldn't keep up that pace the whole way, probably, at the end of their rope as they are. But still, okay, yeah. Which makes it heroic for a hobbit. I agree. Yeah, but again, yeah, they're first of all, don't forget, they're not only terrified that the Nazgul are following them, they're also running downhill, right? Don't forget the hill is steep, right? So they're running down the hill and then out onto the flat. So I bet that terrified hobbits could probably do a pretty nifty clip down the hill, right, and then out into the flat for the first half mile, right? Yeah, exactly. Definitely some adrenaline going on here. I think that's clear. But anyway, I still don't think, if Asphaleth is galloping, especially galloping at the pace that Asphaleth is clearly capable of galloping, which is clearly substantially more than your average horse. I don't think that they would be in easy calling distance at that point, right? Yeah. Hobbits are natural sprinters, Tony. That's exactly it. Yeah. Okay. So Frodo stops Asphaleth. Well, let's look at the riders first. They were halfway across the flat when suddenly there was a noise of horses galloping. Out of the gate in the trees rode a black rider. He reined his horse in and halted, swaying in his saddle. So he stops. Why is he swaying, do you think? I have never been sure of this. Is he sniffing? Is he trying to keep his balance? This is the Black Rider now. This is the Witch King who's swaying. Right? Or is it Frodo? No, it's the rider. It's not Frodo. Out of the gate in the trees. Right? Yeah. Because it's in the next paragraph that Frodo is stopping the horse. Right? Yeah, see, I'm getting confused here now too. No, Frodo, did not obey at once. Checking the horse to a walk, right? Still moving, Asphaleth is, he turned and looked back. Okay, right. So it's clearly the Black Rider that is reining in his horse and swaying. Okay. And yes, you guys are getting ahead of me again. Yeah, the red flash. It's cool. Yes, I agree with you. But hang on, wait. We got to solve the swaying problem. Timer could be a momentum thing, right? But I kind of doubt it. Swaying suggests to me side-to-side motion, not like the kind of forwards and backwards motion that you might expect, if you're just reining your horse in, right? Iwendilian and Timdolf, I tend to think that the sniffing seems corresponds just because he's creepy. It is really creepy, right? I'm sitting there and being like, I imagine this, like, he's doing this little dancey motion here, right? The swaying this way and that, Darren, is what I was remembering too as they're searching the ground, right? So is he looking at is he sniffing? Is he somehow sensing? Is he what? I don't know, like looking for like elf lord residue or does the wound, like did Frodo, nearly wraithified Frodo, leave some kind of traces? I don't know. Mad Violinist is suggesting that if he does too much sniffing here, he will think it smells like elves, which could very well be true from a distance. I think given the associations we've had with the swaying of the Black Riders before, whether it be the sniffing or the swaying, searching the ground here, I think that this is the Witch King getting his bearings. Remember what we learned about Frodo and the daylight, right? And this is where the gate of light comes in relevant again, right? They're just out in the open under the sunlight. In other words, the ringwraiths can't see him at all, right? So, remember, like, disadvantage. I think even disadvantage here on this distance. So this is a spot check at disadvantage at a pretty high challenge rating. So yeah, they can't see much at all, right? Trying to figure out where his prey is, I think, is exactly what we're seeing here. This is a big deal. And yeah, Kimber says, non-specific alien imagery of a wraith sensing in a way that we don't. I think that's a great summary here. Sniffing, searching the, we see Ranger Strider searching the ground, right? We see the Black Rider sniffing before this. They're sensing in some, as you say, alien way. I think is definitely using Wraithdar Penloth. Yeah, sure, I can see that. I can see that. Yeah. Wraith tracking. Exactly. Yep. Yeah. I think something like that. So we see them doing what essentially somehow sensing or perceiving them. And then the other 5 come in. So there's all 5. These are presumably the 5 that were at the Dell under Weathertop. Right. Glorfindel calls out, "Ride, ride," as soon as they come out. The Black Riders come out, right? So it is specifically when Glorfindel says, "Ride forward, ride," that Frodo reins in the horse, right? I'm not saying that he's being deliberately contrary, right? But it is, I think, significant that as soon as he is told to gallop on, right, it is emphasized that he doesn't, in fact, gallop on, right? That he does not obey at once. A strange reluctance seized him, right? And yes, I agree. Ride is directed at Frodo, right? He's going to direct his suggestions to the horse soon. But yeah, he's a strange reluctance to ride on sees him. A strange reluctance to obey Glorfindel, right? I wonder if that may be the case, right? But anyway, so he checks the horse to a walk and turns and looks back. So the horse doesn't turn, right? Asphalot doesn't turn around. Asphalot is walking. Frodo turns around on the walking horse, right, and looks back behind him. The riders seem to sit upon their great steeds like threatening statues upon a hill, dark and solid, while all the woods and land about them receded as if into a mist. Frodo in his state looks back, and there's only one thing that he can see clearly. Yeah. Julie, that is really interesting. Julie is suggesting, good to see, I don't think I've seen you on Twitter here before, Julie. Julie is suggesting that what the Nazgul are perceiving, they're going to be aware of Glorfindel, right? You've got to think the Witch King is up there thinking, okay, Elf Lord is between me and him, right? So what does he do? What does the Witch King do? He starts sending out his telepathic commands to Frodo, right? He's not gonna, ride roughshod over the Elf Lord to get there merely, right? He's gonna try to get Frodo to come to him. And we can see we do have Asphalot slowing down to a walk is the result of these kind of conflicting orders, right? Glorfindel, ride forward, ride. The Witch King, stop, right? And yet, Ermabwet, I agree. The dark, solid statues against the mist is a fascinating description. I think statues is meant to convey the comparative solidity of them. Remember, everything he's been looking at, right? Everything Frodo's been seeing is all vague and cloudy and pale and misty, right? And then he looks back at the riders, and there they are, right? They are clear. They look like they're made of stone compared with what he's been looking at, right? Everything else receding as if into a mist, right? They and they only come into focus upon a hill dark and solid, while all the woods and land about them receded, right? Exactly. Solid shows how much he is in their world. Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Julie is thinking it's almost echoes of the Barrow Downs as well. The stones in the mist, right? Yeah, mist. Julie, I wasn't thinking of the Barrow Downs, but of course I should be, right? Remember the darkness and the mist closing in around the hobbits there, and how they were brought and guided, how the will of the Barrow Wights sort of enfolded them and brought them into just the place where they weren't supposed to be, right? Over on the eastern side of the Barrows, and then taken by the Barrow Wights. So yeah, we can see a kind of repetition of this, right? Yeah, good. Johannes, they were described, I think, as statues in Crick Hollow too. That sounds familiar, but I think that was because they were just standing super still, right? That was just a reflection of them not moving, standing there in "we're creeping out the neighborhood" mode, while they waited until the darkness before the dawn, in their sort of stealthy but extremely low speed infiltration of the house at Crick Hollow. Yeah, it is possible that they're being unnaturally still here too, using the same intimidation tactics. Darren, I agree with that. It does seem to be part, in that way, Mad Violinist, I agree, of their spiritual warfare. That seems to work. And the silent command that they're given seems to be sort of in conjunction with that, right? It's part of the intimidation tactics that they're doing here. So he knows in his heart, and I forgot. This is one of the problems when the conversations keep going on for as long as we have here. Somebody mentioned this like a while back, and I don't remember who, that we get the repetition, right? Just as Glorfindel, feels in his heart that the pursuit is now close upon them. Here, Frodo knows in his heart that they are silently commanding him to wait, right? This is not about foreboding, but again, this is about his own spiritual receptor, right? Is telling him clearly what's going on here. He is being silently commanded to wait, and his reaction is fear and hatred. Mabwed, yes, a different kind of fear. Presumably he was already afraid, right? This is not like, oh, shoot, now I'm terrified. I was fine before. But I agree that this is a different kind of fear, right? So what kind of fear? Exactly, right? Before, he was presumably afraid of getting caught, right? Afraid of getting captured. Now he's afraid of something else. Yes, Fourth Dauntless, realizing you're not in control of your own actions is kind of terrifying, right? He's afraid not of them as an external enemy. He's afraid of what is inside of him, right? He's afraid of being dominated and controlled. That seems to be what's and hatred is awakening in him right then. You are trying to control me. Remember also the way that he chided himself for weakness of will after Weathertop, right? He knew, in retrospect, he knew that the command to put on the ring was coming from his enemy, that he was obeying the commanding will of his enemy in putting on the ring. And he recognizes now, with that experience, the same kind of command that is commanding him to wait, to stop, right? And now recognizing that, he's afraid because he knows he's succumbed to this before, and I'm sure that he can feel himself weaker than he was at Weathertop as well, right? But hatred comes up as well, and he reacts like he reacted in Weathertop. And remember when we were talking about that, remember we did talk about the attack on Weathertop, didn't we? I'm pretty sure we covered that. The drawing of his sword in the dell under Weathertop was clearly a good sign, right? That's very clearly better recap just to make sure. JJ, ha ha. But anyway, that was clearly a good thing, right? When Frodo did that. Here it's clearly a good thing too. He is defying the will of the Witch King. It's good. It's good that he has that much, gumption still left, right? His hand left the bridle, and it gripped the hilt of his sword, and with a red flash he drew it. Now we can talk about the red flash. And yes, I agree with what most of you guys were saying before. Two things. First of all, we've seen his sword glowing red before. Getting my liquids all mixed up. But that was when he was wearing the ring, right? And he was in the Wraith world. The fact that it's flashing red as he draws it suggests that he can now see that with his waking eyes, right? That he himself can see, at least in a brief flash, that red power of his sword that was visible when he was wearing the ring before. Well, Matt, when I say weaker, I only mean his hold on, the world of light and forms is weaker, right? There is a sense in which he might be stronger. Matt is suggesting, the fact that he resists here, that he notices the Witch King's efforts, is a sign that he's stronger and more experienced than he was. Yeah, definitely more experienced, right? He now, I think that Frodo's reaction here, that fear and hatred that he's having, is a kind of, fool me once, shame on you, or, fool me twice, shame on me kind of thing, right? He this is being done to him again. He regrets how he reacted or didn't react last time, and he's not going to have it again. Evil Dr. Cannon, I think that Frodo is the one who sees it flashing red. We're just told that he drew it with a red flash, but I think that's presumably his own point of view there. Merlinus, that mention of his hatred awakening, and then the red flash of his sword. He drew his sword in anger, and is the sword responding to that in some sense? Maybe. I would think that kind of thing, being afraid of the domination of the Witch King and hating the Witch King for attempting to exert that control over you and drawing the weapon in anger, I would think that the weapon forged by the Dunedain to fight against Angmar would be totally into that whole sequence, right? I think it would respond very effectively to that. Mad Violinist thinks it might just be the inlay. Nah. It could be. But again, it seems to be not a coincidence. Mad Violinist, you could say it kind of goes the other way around too, right? It had a red inlay, but that seemed to be perhaps something to do with why it glowed red, that the inlay seemed to be perhaps had something to do with the power with which it was invested by its smith when it was made in Arnor. But anyway, that Frodo would be able to perceive the power of the sword, which was clearly perceptible before when he was completely in the Wraith world, wearing the ring. And anyway, it certainly stands to reason that he would be able to see something here, given how close he is to the edge here. Good. Okay. Yeah. Mad Violinist points out that Merry won't see that in book 5. Yeah. It's also a lot darker when Merry draws his sword in book 5. But yeah. Okay, cool. Anduril glows red in the daytime too. Yeah, but Anduril's a more upgrade. That's different. Okay, how many more slides are we from the end of the chapter, Trifle? 6! Yeah, we're almost there. Not tonight. It's not going to happen here tonight. There were a couple comments. Somebody was asking in the town, I think, about the bridle. Of course, he's got a bridle. Asphiloth has a bridle. Glorfindel has both a saddle and a bridle, right? A saddle, fortunately, for Frodo. But not a bit. And this is totally a retconning thing. Asphiloth is clearly described wearing a saddle and a bridle because Tolkien hadn't thought of the whole elf's fashion of riding yet. And there's no reason to think that sometimes elves would not choose to ride with stuff, right? That they could put bells on and stuff. Come on, you know that Glorfindel's a Noldo. He would want to make the horse look pretty, right? So anyway, besides which, he also knows he's going after Frodo, and it is quite possible that Glorfindel's plan all along, right? That let's put Frodo on the back of my horse might have been plan A if he had met with him on the road, right? Yeah, exactly. Marianne was just suggesting the same thing. But James, exactly. You've also got to think about the bling, right? And I'm sure that's got to be part of it, right? Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, I'm not going to worry about Anduril yet. We're still quite a ways away from Anduril. Yeah, I think we're good. Tune in next week when the next to the next stage. I know it's hard to stop here, Tim, isn't it? I totally get that. But nevertheless, we should stop here. We're not going to make it to the end of the chapter, no matter what we do. So yeah. And you're right, Curita, Pimp My Ride Elvish Edition. I mean, come on, that's totally what the Noldor would be about, wouldn't it? Wouldn't they? All right. So we're going to stop here. We're going to go on our field trip now. Thanks everybody for joining us. We will have our ride to the ford. So I'm thinking we'll have the sprint to the ford, and like the beginning of the confrontation between Frodo and the Witch King at the ford, and then we'll do the last bit. So yeah, 2 more weeks, no problem. Sorry, I'm laughing at Tony, saying it's a good thing that Aragorn didn't draw the broken half of Narsil, the Nazgul would really have been in trouble. Here's Tony worrying again about Aragorn not having a primary weapon. Well. All right. So I'm going to say goodnight to everybody on Twitter. Thanks for joining us. As usual, you guys were great. Julie, great to see you there tonight on Twitter. That was really fun. As well as Luke and Arden Crayon, some of our trusty standbys there. So thanks, everybody. Come over to twitch.tv/SignumU. See ya. Okay. Good evening. All right. Yes, there was. Text mood is a phenomenon. Okay. Hey, wait a second. How is this Narnian? Okay, I was going to say he's not. All right, I was going to say this Narnian looked like he was traded, but he's not traded. Okay, that's fine. I just have more buttons than I was expecting. All right. So we're going back to the Trollshaws. We're going to go to the ford and across the ford. And it won't take us all that long to go across the ford. But, yeah. All right. So good night to folks who are not going with us. And to those of you who are, let us ride to the Ford of Rivendell, because as usual with the Trollshaws, we don't have any shortcuts. Once we get to Rivendell, this will be so much easier. Yes, for a time. No, I don't. Yeah, no, it's fine. Yeah, they've reset. Well, that's what I thought. That's why I was surprised because I just like Narnian's quick bar is like all full up, whereas on his the other server, like most of it was empty because he got detraded, you know. But anyway. All right, so I'm going by way of the Prancing Pony, not only because I enjoy going by way of the Prancing Pony, but also I find it easier with the lag. to yeah. There we go. Oh, hang on a second. So, sorry, Valoria, they can't hear you yet. I got to change my sound settings here. Hang on. We'll get there. No, it's not you. Oh, yeah, I see the problem. Thanks for pointing that out, guys. Okay, there we go. So you can say something, Valoria.
All right. Good evening once again.
We've got you there.
So
okay, very good.
All right.
Thank you, Gravity and Druid's Fire. Appreciate that.
Very, very much appreciated.
Yeah. So look at that. See, I forgot 2 things here tonight. It's just still a relatively good percentage of all the things I'm supposed to remember, but nevertheless. All right. Okay.
I'm already there, so I'll see you when you get here.
Okay, yeah, sorry. I stopped in the middle of the road to adjust my settings. Okay.
And I always got to remember to put the stop and smell the roses trait on so I don't outstrip everybody on horse.
Right.
So it's mentioning you're talking about, like, the Ford seems to be like this miraculous place. Everything will be fixed when we get to the Ford. Everything will be great once we're over the Ford, that sort of thing. It always reminds me of the Legend of Sleepy Hollow, where he keeps going, and it said he has to aim for the bridge, and the spirit will go away. Aim for the bridge, and the spirit can't follow him. Those myths about crossing water to shake off evil things.
Absolutely, yeah. No, that's it's a very prominent legend. Yep.
Dracula. They always had that too, where Dracula couldn't cross.
Exactly. Yeah, can't cross, or can only cross
when he's
water.
Carried over.
Right, or at the change of the tide,
right?
As well.
Yeah, change of the tide. That's what it was.
Yeah. The
change of the tide, noon, and midnight.
Yeah. It's all those transitional times. That's when Dracula is able to do stuff. Sunrise, sunset,
is that Transylvania
noon.
time, or is it moving with the time zones?
It's local time. Yeah,
local
time.
So
Clearly
it's
local
direct
time.
midday sun over and stuff.
Yeah, direct midday sun, and same thing with the change of the tide, right? It's at the local waters. Yeah. Liminal times, Tony, exactly.
That's the other thing I keep thinking when Frodo's sitting there, being exhausted and waiting for the changes in light, changes in everything. It always reminds me of Mina Harker when she was getting close to sunrise and sunset.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. No, I've been remembering, I think a couple others, I think Tony referred to it before too. Yes, the description of Frodo in this section of the Fellowship of the Ring reminds me a lot of Mina Harker, as she is uncomfortably transitioning into vampirish state. Yeah. And Tolkien is clearly not just like following that model. It doesn't work anything like the same exactly, but that sense of transition, and more importantly, that sense of discomfort as you're looking on, right? And seeing these things happening and kind of knowing what it means and not being able to do anything about it, is makes me. That's the part that makes me think of that particularly. Of course, the way that the story is narrated by Van Helsing at that point.
Yes.
And so again, we're having him watching and knowing exactly what it means and not wanting to admit that it's happening and everything. It's
all our companions, are trying to keep everyone's spirits up.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it does strike me, that sort of thing, and then the whole muttered whispers in Elvish.
Yeah, absolutely. And we were on Gladden here tonight.
Yes, Gladden server. I'm on as Jonathan tonight.
Cool.
Jonathan with a D.
Tim, you're right. I think that the hydrophobia does have something to do with Christian baptism. Well, it certainly does in Dracula. I have no questions about that. But yes, I do think that it has some resonance with baptism, definitely.
Mm-hmm. That and rabies with bats,
Yeah, sure.
I mean, probably a coincidence, but still kind of funny when you think about it.
Yeah, so Tony Glorfindel is kind of like Van Helsing there. Not very much. Glorfindel is much more...
Aragorn's more of a Van Helsing than Glorfindel, I believe.
Yeah, that's true.
Using his knowledge of herbs and local legend to do everything he can.
No, there's really no Glorfindel parallel in Dracula, I think, certainly.
No, Glorfindel's definitely more of an angel, just sort of showing up and helping everybody.
Yeah, definitely more like that. Okay. All right, I want to be looking for... We're getting closer now to the relevant landscape. We're still in the...
Oh, we want to see the cutaway, huh?
Yeah, exactly. It's
the moist part... Yeah, that moist part got my attention, too. It reminds me of just red earth clay that's still connected to underground water.
Right.
Because, those will leak.
Right.
Those will leak when they're saturated. Get a lot of those in Virginia where they're cutting through the mountains to make roads.
Right. Okay.
This still looks like erosion over here.
I'm pretty sure that in Lotro they depict so here's one example of one of the, and this is not the cutting leading to the ford, but this is one of the kinds of we get the description of there being the steep banks. This is more like the place where Glorfindel overtook them. Right, and they're the steep banks that they're trying to scramble up, right, to get out of the way. That seems to me more like what we're getting here. Not that these aren't scramble-upable by hobbits, but...
or by us.
Yeah, exactly. But then I think, of course, it's instead of the 2 days march, it's only a very short time here. And I love the autumnal landscape, Tim, here in the Trollshaws.
Yeah.
Okay, now notice the change to pine woods. Right, there's the pines up on the top of the cliffs. So I think that this is the cutting. Now it doesn't feel very tunnel-like. They haven't made it very close.
No.
I don't know whether an actual, like if it were more tunnel-like, if it would do weird things with the camera angle or something.
Yeah, it could be. It'd be too hard to get an angle with the gyroscopic candle.
Yeah.
Camera.
Yeah. Because...
Can't talk today.
Am I not right to think that it's right after this that we get the descent, right? Because from here it's just going to descend straight down to the ford, right? Yeah, so the thing that I miss here, we don't get anything that's like a gate unless we're still too early for it. I don't think so. Let's write down. Yeah, so Tim, there are no seasons in Lotro, like the trees don't change. The graphics on the landscape is static in that way. But yeah, they do match it to the story. So since the hobbits pass through this place in fall, then they make it fall here.
Yeah, I kind of like that, actually. It gives you sort of a footing on what's going on and when and why.
Okay. Yeah, this is not very open yet. We're going to come out into the open. Here is the ford here.
Yeah, so, the columns of trees.
Yeah, so we've got the trees here. So I suppose this is the spot that would be the equivalent. It's still not very gate-like. We are getting right between the trees. But again, it's fairly broad, the road here.
Mm-hmm.
And then we come out and it's a good deal less than a mile, of course, but again, proportions are hard. It couldn't really feel like a mile, because if it felt like a mile, it would be the same as the distance from, to kind of go back out, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it would be like the distance from, from like Woodhull to the Brandywine, if it really felt like a mile. So
can you imagine Lake Evendim if it was proportional in size?
Oh my goodness, yeah. No, I mean it's the scale. What is the scale exactly? I forget the actual ratio. There's
I don't
some
remember
kind
numbers.
of rough ratio, isn't there?
Hmm.
I forget. I seem to remember somebody calculating this before, but I can't.
Yeah, if anyone remembers it, feel free to post it.
Yeah.
I do not remember numbers.
Yeah, me neither. But anyway, here's the other thing that I want to look at. I want to go back up. Hang on. I'm going to go back up to the gate up here, gate-ish, right when the trees open up. Okay, right when the trees open up, and then we have the mountains. So it's the mountains I'm wanting to look up at here on the other side of the ford. And we can already see the winding path from here that's described, right? The path, you can tell that it goes up and turns and winds, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now we don't see the mountains receding into the distance here. We're really only seeing the one sort of shelving mountain, and then we can see them a little bit further down, but we're not really seeing like, the snow-capped peaks in the background from this perspective here. Yeah. Yeah, Tim, the scale, it's got to be pretty, because the fact is, in gaming terms, it's really a pretty big world. I mean, when you if you set off on horseback from, the Blue Mountains and just ride all the way across the Shire and Bree and over through the mountains and come out the other side of Moria and then ride all the way. It takes hours to do that.
Yeah, it'd take your whole day.
So it's obviously you can't make it realistic such that it actually takes months, to travel these distances.
I'm not sure I'd want to play that game.
yeah, super realistic geography would be. Yeah.
I'm a super fan, but I have limits and a life.
Exactly. So having it take, as I say, like a couple of hours to ride all the way across is a sufficient, sort of nod to the fact that the distances are very great.
And just how much of world they've put in here.
Right. Yeah, but it's exactly. And the fact is that it does make it difficult, though. The problem is, I mean, one can certainly appreciate the scale on a grand scale, right?
Yeah.
When you're thinking of big distances, one appreciates the small scale when you're, trying to ride from the Shire to Rivendell, for instance. But when you're wanting to look at small parts of the topography, right? Like the long flat mile from the from the hill down to the ford, one kind of misses it at that point.
It's like at that point it's like I'll just go to New Zealand at this point.
Right, exactly.
I'd rather actually be there than look at a computer screen for as long as it would take me.
Right, exactly. All right, well, let's go up and see what we can see around here.
Reminds me of a guy whose feed I follow who does medieval pilgrimages on foot.
Right.
And he's English, of course, so, it's not like he's going across Europe or anything, but...
Right.
Yeah.
Hang on, so I just want to look up here. My question now is... Are there any ruins on this side of the river? No, we saw Delusad down on this side of the river.
Yeah, we did. We did see Delusad, yeah.
Are there any other ruins or evidence about? I'm not seeing any up here.
No.
Can we go up this way?
Looks pretty desolate.
Yeah, so I'm scanning around at like the crags and things where we would expect to see Arnorian ruins if there were Arnorian ruins to be had.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not seeing any. Okay, and now we're regaining.
It's almost like everything was sort of carefully erased from everything.
Right. Nothing down this way, is there? I used to get so lost.
Still do on a bad day.
Sorry, I'm now like deliberately riding off in the wilderness to look for ruins.
See, I still look for wildcats after your chicken incident.
Oh man, forget
It's like I'm a level 50. I do not need to be afraid of being one shot by a wildcat.
Right,
I just cannot
lynxes,
shake that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hungry. Ooh, look. It's like a little pass. I found a secret valley.
A lot of enemies down here.
Yeah, there's not really
Hidden valley. The ranch dressing?
Something like that. Isn't there a valley, with worms that's down in this way? Isn't there something up?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that will kick your butt around here. Or one's butt, not necessarily yours.
Right. Wait, Deathman, there are ruins on the side of the hill? Hang on, we can't miss the ruins on the side of the hill if there are ruins on the top of the hill. Okay.
Yeah, I can't get to it.
Yeah, I agree that getting lost is the point. I don't know that I've ever been
it's
here
a pretty
before.
good defense when it defends itself at this point.
Yeah.
All you need is a really terrible sense of direction.
We've come all the way back down. Yeah, look at this. Here we are, all the way back down to this river inlet.
You're back down. Let's switch back.
Wait a second. I want to keep working my way south here. Ooh, look. Worm nests.
Worm signs.
Yes. Yeah, I don't think I've ever been here in my life. Not that I know where here is.
I don't even know if I could find you.
Okay, we've got crawlies and... What is going on here? More worms? Man, I think so. I remember getting lost through here. I think I must have gotten insufficiently lost because I never got this lost before. Wow. Okay.
We always strive to reach new highs on these feeds. So.
Yeah, hang on a second here. Where am I? Okay. I'm still looking south here. Let's keep going. Let's go south. No, wait. I just came from this way. How did that happen? I thought I already got lost while being lost. Or wait, do I want to go this way? I want to go this way.
Like you do.
Yes, I want to go this way because I want to go up again now. No, I can't go up. Well, let me go up. Oh, man. Now I'm stuck.
Oh, no. Like proper stuck?
No, not proper stuck.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So, let's go.
I'm looking around for runes too. I'm like at the top of the other.
Yeah, tell me if you see anything. I want to.
Yeah, I'm not.
I can't tell if this is the same worm-infested puddle I've just been in.
I'm not sure. I don't think there's any signs of life up here.
Doesn't look like it.
No.
Okay, how do I get up the mountain? I have to go back and go up the... There's a path. Isn't there a path?
Yeah. You almost want to start over again. This rate.
Nah.
It's a switchback, so it's a zigzag.
Right. Oh, no, I don't mean the path to Rivendell.
Oh.
No.
Well, where are you now? I don't even know where you are, so I'm not sure what...
How did I end up going north again? Darn it. Anyway, so I'm going north, apparently. But I'm going up.
You're being herded. You're
I
being
am
herded
being
by
herded.
the switchback.
Okay. Ooh. This is one of those valleys that I... Look at that ruin, that nice tower on the far side. Is that Echad Candleth over there? Nope. I'm looking in the wrong direction.
For all I know, it's like a candle.
That's just one of those towers. Yeah, see, look, there's the whole... Oh, yeah, you can see them really well from over here. It's like a whole
Nowadays,
row
I
of
think they
towers.
just put these towers there to taunt you.
Yeah.
You specifically.
Me specifically, yeah, exactly. So I'm trying to get right up to the edge here. Okay, right, so see, there's the path that we went south along the river. Right, there's the path that runs, and see, there's that little archway, right, that it passed through right before it went down. Because then that's the valley, and Echad Candleth is up. There it is, over there, down to the south. West, right? And then up above that, we have these towers along the hills, up along the river. Kind of like we can see up by the Brandywine. Okay, well, this is a beautiful view of the... Ooh, and look, we can see, what's it called? Gwingris from here?
Gwingris, yeah.
Look at Gwingris down there. That's down
the
in
Holland?
Regian. Oh, yeah, I can see all the way into Holland from here.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Well, at least I have a better idea of where you are now.
That's clearly what that is. Man.
But do you know where the Forgotten Monument is?
The Forgotten Monument?
We forgot.
Yeah. No clue. What monument?
Well, the coordinates are 37.1 west and 12 south.
Wait,
Communicated by
other way around?
this.
37.1 south and 12 west?
Well,
No?
I guess so, yeah.
Okay.
Yes, the other way around.
Okay, I was going to say good, or else it's not very close to here,
Yeah,
if that's the
Ron
case.
said this is bad. He sent me a direct message, so I'm like communicating.
Okay, all right. Wait, so... Oh, look, and you can even see the gazebos over there. Whoa, what a beautifully clear day. I can see the inland gazebos on the far
On a
side.
clear day.
I
And I can't wait till they give us a 64-bit client to even make this look better.
Yeah, wow. Okay. So wait a second. There's a monument. Is it up here?
The coordinates are 37.1 south and 12 west. So you're
I'm
not
sure
too
that's-
far away from it.
Yeah, I'm sure it's not going to be at all frustrating to find in these here hills. Okay, 31.7 south. All right, hang on, I'm there. So now I'm headed west. Oh, ha! Oh, ho! It's a gazebo. Okay, we have found a Rudaran
dread
gazebo on the east side of the river. So we have evidence of, and yes, they even have equipped it with the headless statue, as every good Rudaran gazebo is so equipped, and with artichokes.
Why do their gazebos hate heads?
Well, you know, all of the cool gazebos have decapitated statues. Obviously Rudaran. Actually,
It's from the Anticephalus period.
the Anticephalus period of Rudaran ruins. Absolutely. Oh, wow. Lots of fireplaces. People setting up here. Okay. All right. So, the Arnorians did come this far. Man, boy, those Rudarans were everywhere.
Yep.
Man. And this
Can't
again...
live with them, can't burn down their fortresses.
Right. But you can decapitate the statues atop their gazebos, apparently.
Unless they do it first.
It's true. Because we don't really have evidence that any of those statues ever did have heads. Okay, so the Rudarans made it over here. We've not found a fortress. Well, we did find Delosad, which whatever that is, like a retreat center / yeah, like conference hall or whatever it was. And then
Hey, I found you guys! Yay!
Right, and then there's and now we see this gazebo up on top of the hill. Hey, Arthur, you found the gazebo. Here we are. See, isn't it a lovely view from here?
It is a nice view.
Well, we've seen
Very
other,
red.
Rudaran towers and gazebos set on scenic overlooks, but boy, this is a way more. I mean, this is putting all those other scenic overlooks to shame. And
I
look at
don't
that.
think they're an acrophobic lot.
No, look at that. We can see straight down into Ekhad Condoleth over there.
Oh, yeah.
Man. Wow. Okay. All right.
Crazy.
But I think this is not yet where I wanted to go. Because I think there's still another, but I don't know if I can get there from here.
All right, well.
I don't think so, because I think there's a cliff. There's a cliff.
Yeah.
And I have to say, Forgotten Monument seems like a bit of a misnomer. I mean, it's not exactly a monument. Oops, speaking of cliffs.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can skate down. Here we go. Whee!
I can skate down, okay. All right, well, we're still headed south, so that's good.
It's just a flesh wound.
Okay.
Whoa, what's... Oh,
Kirith
dragon nest.
Ulun.
Uh-huh.
I think
some
this
kind
is
of
the
big dragons here.
think this is the secret valley I was yes, I think so. Okay. All right, some significantly sized fire worms here. This is not the same place where I was before. No, it is not.
No, it isn't.
Uh-huh.
That's
Yes,
pretty
this
fun.
is the valley I was thinking of.
I think I fell in this valley a couple times.
I definitely found this place. I don't remember the way down from the path up from the Ford of Rivendell.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those. You remember the way down, but the way up's kind of vague.
Yeah.
The way down usually involved some foolhardy decision of, I'll just ride in this direction.
All right. There's nowhere south from here, right? This is the end of the going south.
I think
here,
so.
I think.
Yes.
Okay.
Because at that point you're just gonna. Yeah, it's a boxed-in canyon at this point.
Yeah, and we have no evidence of any. No, look, an unlikely corpse. Whose corpse is this? Someone who met an untimely end, obviously, but.
It's a bandit corpse, but
Yeah, it looks like a bandit.
bit far-fetched to be out this place,
My
though.
goodness. Yeah. Okay. So I wanted to see if there was any evidence that this place here had been taken over by any, that the worms had been taking over any Rudauran ruins, but I don't
think we can get back up that way.
No, we can't.
It was a one-shot
Just
deal.
riding around. Okay. But we can leave from here and then go down that path towards the river. You know, that path. If I remember where that is. But yeah, you have to go back up. It also does not help that since I've been here, they did that cosmetic upgrade.
Yeah, with the bushes.
With all the bushes. So there's so many more
Yeah.
bushes than there used to be. Yeah, over here is where that... Where's that path? Yeah, here it is.
Oh, someone went right off the cliff. Sorry.
Here's the path. Path's down here. Yes, sir.
Yeah, this is the one I was following. I thought you were talking about this one.
No, this is the one I was looking for the secret valley at the top of the pass reached by this little path.
Mm-hmm.
So this is it, right? Oh no, this is the dead end. Oh, I've done this so many times before.
Yep.
And there I go off the cliff. Oh no!
Seriously?
Seriously, fell off the cliff. Bam! No problem.
Are you respawning or are you heading back up?
Yeah, I'm going to respawn. I'm not going to be able to get back up. Oh, man.
Where are
It's
you?
okay. I don't know. Let's
Don't
see.
say Oscarith.
No, back in the Bruinen Gorges.
Oh, okay.
Let's Let's see, where am I exactly? Oh,
I'm
yeah,
gonna
actually
have to-
pretty close to
so I can
Thornhud,
follow.
actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm up by Thornhud. No problem. Yeah, this is why that's why I used to... that place, actually, those very cliffs, is exactly where I first learned the trick of using suicide as a form of transportation. Because I was trying laboriously to like find my way out of the mountains and back, and I fell off one of the cliffs and died, and then respawned here, and I'm like, oh, and the stable master's right around the corner. That's super convenient.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I gotta orient myself. Where am I and where's the path?
Okay. All right. I'm headed back to the ford now.
Yeah, so am I. Beat you there.
Fourth Dauntless thinks that it's shocking that Elrond would have allowed the Rudarans to build on his side of the river. But see, I'm not sure. I think it's pretty cunning, really, especially since, that gazebo was built a long ways away from Rivendell. There's no way that anyone having anything to do with that gazebo way down there would be able to... I mean, you wouldn't be able to see down into Rivendell or anything like that. It's way on the other side. So, yeah, you would want to, let them kind of do their thing and not really notice. I mean, if you forbade them, then you're giving away the fact that you're right there, right?
Mm-hmm. Better to watch and wait.
Exactly. All right.
All right, I'm back at the ford.
I'm almost there. Okay. You know what time is it? It's getting late.
Yeah, it's getting kind of late.
Okay. I am coming to the ford. Here we are. Approaching the long flat mile. The goblins by really quickly. Here we go. Okay, I'm done. Here we are. Into the ford. Excellent. Okay.
Well, that was a fun little misadventure.
Yeah, that was good. Well, I found that other valley that I wanted to find and confirmed there was nothing there. But we did find that one gazebo, so that was good.
Yeah. Thanks whoever sent us that tip. That was pretty useful.
Yes.
That was Merlinus.
That was Merlinus. Oh, great. Thank you, Merlinus. Yeah, he just had to... he's just having to go here. Excellent. Yes, he says he's the lore master who flew off the cliff just before I did, so... Yeah,
yeah, I saw that.
All right.
That's the disadvantage of following my fearless leader.
Yeah, let's see if we can make a little bit more progress here towards the actual, pass as it's supposed to be here. Okay. Now we are seriously ascending up into the mountains towards Rivendell.
In earnest.
In earnest. And I'm looking around, and I'm not seeing any towers. All right, wait. That's just cliff over there.
That's
right?
rock. That's just made of rock.
Yeah, it's just rock and shadows. Okay, I saw the lines, which looked like cut stone, but I think it's just the shadows of pine trees on the rock. Okay.
It's almost like those cliff mesas where they got the wind just carving these little statues out of tall rock towers.
Yeah, the pine trees are so straight that I keep seeing, the straight lines of the pines breaking the rocks and thinking I'm seeing construction.
It's scaffolding.
Okay, here's a campsite.
Anything's scaffolding if you can climb on it.
Dude, why is this campsite empty? Aren't there usually people here?
It's a mustering horn. Oh, no, that's a little further up ahead.
Oh, that's the next one. So this is just they left the tent here in case you want to muster with folks?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. That's awful thoughtful of them.
Pretty sure there's a burn ban on today. I wouldn't leave a fire unattended.
Yeah, well.
Oh no, the badgers! Save me from the wee badgers!
Oh, the badgers are attacking?
Yeah, they're nasty. That's one thing they really got right in the game. It's just how scary badgers are.
We missed Giant Valley, didn't we?
Did we?
I think we did. Yeah, I think the entrance is, again, harder for me to recognize now with all these bushes. Yes, there it is.
Oh, yeah. Did we miss the valley or survive the valley?
There we go. Okay.
Is this Giant Valley or Giant Dragon Valley?
Well, some of both. Okay. Now we're starting to see the mountains off in the distance.
Mm-hmm.
The for real mountains.
It still looks like this is the kind of place where you'd expect a tower on every single outcrop.
Yeah, that's what I keep looking for. I keep scanning the heights to see if anybody built anything. But I'm not seeing anything yet. Okay. Well, I think, Oh,
whoa.
Hi there, large dragon.
This thing's... Oh.
Yeah, oh, good to see you too. That's excellent. Okay, well, we don't have time to explore all of Giant Valley. Maybe we'll have to start here next time. I think it's getting fairly late.
There's a lot of stuff here.
There is a lot of stuff here, and I want to explore Giant Valley. But we will... Hey, look, a building with a giant next to it. Woo-hoo.
There's a few other buildings back there, too, in the distance.
Yeah. Yes, there are.
That's exciting.
Okay, all right, so we'll explore Giant Valley next time and then work our way closer to Rivendell. We are, like, very close to getting to Rivendell and to getting our explorations here to line up with the text. But we'll see what we can do. Anyway, all right. So we're going to stop here at the edge of Giant Valley. Thanks, everybody, for wandering through the wilderness with me. Fun to see how they have placed this, and I do love. I mean, several people were saying in the comments that, of course, how easy it is to get lost in the forest slopes and switchbacks and valleys. There is really the point, right? You know, they do a very good job of making Rivendell into a not obnoxiously concealed place, but definitely a hidden valley that you feel a sense of accomplishment when you finally have found your way to it.
Or give up and cheat and buy a stable.
That's right. That's right. Excellent. So thanks everybody for joining us this week, and we will see you guys next week for we should actually make it into the Ford next time, and then we will explore Giant Valley for next week. So thanks everybody for joining us, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye now.
Good night.
Bye.
Thanks for joining me on this epic exploration of The Lord of the Rings and of Standing Stone's video adaptation of Tolkien's story. If you are having even half the fun I'm having on this journey, I hope you will consider supporting the project by donating at signumuniversity.org/fund.